This is Jarrod Horak for the RunawayHorse.com. I'm back with my third video this week. I took a look back at the Kentucky Oaks in my first video. I took a look back at the Kentucky Derby, and then I previewed the Preakness Stakes in my last video. And in this race, in this video, I'm just going to go through and talk about some of the angles and handicapping factors that I've used in the Preakness Stakes and have been successful over the years. Now, this is my hometown race, the Preakness. I've covered the Preakness, and I've actually been following the Preakness since 1980. When I was a young boy in 1980, that was my first Kentucky Derby. I saw Genuine Risk win the Kentucky Derby that year, and then I was rooting for her in the Preakness Stakes. And I remember getting mad because Angel Cordero aboard Codex bullied her, and there was a lot of controversy that went on for a long time in that race when Codex ended up winning that one. And then it didn't take long for me to have some success in the Preakness Stakes. I had Aloma's Ruler as my top choice in 1982, and then I backed that up with Deputed Testimony, the local horse in the mud, in 1983. And then some others that I had that were top choices, Tank's Prospect for trainer D. Wayne Lucas in 1985. And then some of the angles that I started to use early on, horses that I bet in the Kentucky Derby, and then they didn't run well, and then I backed them again in the Preakness Stakes. Snow Chief in 1986 fit that pattern. Chris McCarron rode. Risen Star, another one. I picked him in the Derby, and then I bet him back in the Preakness Stakes. He paid a much better. He was third in the Derby. He had some trouble, and then he paid well in the Preakness Stakes. Hansel, probably one of my favorite horses ever. I was able to visit Hansel and in Virginia well after he retired, and I'll throw some photos up of that, and throughout this video I'll throw some photos of some when I've covered the Preakness Stakes. We've gone out live and taken pictures, and so I'll put them up throughout this video. But I had Hansel, and I was able to win on him in the Preakness and the Belmont Stakes. I was very happy. Pine Bluff, another one. I played him back in the Preakness Stakes, and he won that. So a lot of early success there. Another one was Point Given. I was really aggravated that he was so close to a very fast pace in 2001, and thought that he had a very good chance to win the Triple Crown. And he was too close to that pace, and then he romped in the Preakness and the Belmont Stakes. So those are some of the horses early on where I used that angle of, and I think that's an angle that if a horse that you played this year in the Kentucky Derby, don't give up on them. That's what this angle shows. Back them again. Like if you thought that they were the horse to beat going into the Derby, for whatever reason, maybe they didn't run that race, don't give up. Play those horses again in the Preakness Stakes. They could certainly bounce back and run a much better race. I had recently for my full cards for the Preakness Stakes, I've had some good success with those full cards. I've been able to have in the Preakness Stakes, let's just go back to 2015. I had the trifecta, American Pharaoh, Tale of Verve, and Divining Rod. Trifecta paid $985. The next year, Exaggerator was my top choice. I had the Exacta there for $88, the Superfecta for $634. And then more recently, I've been able to do well in the last few years. And going to 2018, Justify. I went out to the Preakness and covered that live that year. Justify and Bravazzo. Had that Exacta, the Trifecta for $296, and the Superfecta for $745. And then last year, big score in the Preakness, I had Rumbauer. My top choice was Midnight Bourbon. I had that Exacta, Rumbauer, Midnight Bourbon, paid $98. Had the Trifecta for $325 and the Superfecta for over $2,000. So if you purchased any of those full cards recently from 2015 on, I've had a lot of success in the Preakness. It's as I said, it's my hometown race. I've covered this race. I know Pimlico. I've been there a million times. I know that track like the back of my hand, and I certainly know what it takes to win the Preakness, and we'll see if I can be on the right track again. You're not going to be right every year, but if you know what you're doing, you're following certain angles, and you just stick with some of the horses, like I said, that maybe ran in the Kentucky Derby and performed well there, or maybe not quite up to par, and then you stuck with them, maybe you'll be rewarded with a much better price and a much better effort in the Preakness Stakes. Now, this year we saw a pace collapse. There's no doubt about that. I don't think anybody's going to dispute that fact. With the 21 and change opening quarter, the top 7 horses that were up on that pace finished nowhere. So late runners dominated in the Kentucky Derby this year, and we've seen that before. We've seen late runners like Strike the Gold in 1991, fast pace, rolled home. He ended up finishing 6th in the Preakness. Lil E.T. even, in 1992, he won the Derby from off the pace. He was 5th in the Preakness. Sea Hero, same thing in 1993. He rallied for the win, and then he didn't run well in the Preakness. Monarchos, 2001, I mentioned that one with point given up on the pace. Monarchos stormed home from the back of the pack, did not finish anywhere in the Preakness Stakes. Giacomo in 2005. In the Kentucky Derby, he paid $102.60, rallying for the win. He ended up finishing 3rd at Pimlico. Mind That Bird, he paid $103.20 in 2009 when he rallied inside to win the Kentucky Derby. He ended up finishing 2nd behind Rachel Alexandra in the Preakness Stakes. And then Orb in 2013 when Palace Malice set that fast pace, he won there, and then he was 4th at Pimlico a couple weeks later. So now Rich Strike is that next horse that is the late running bomb that's going to try to duplicate that victory in the Preakness Stakes. And looking at the possible field right now, that doesn't look like a great possibility. And then also, the best closer doesn't always win in the Kentucky Derby. It's a 20-horse field. You have some horses maybe that don't handle the mile and a quarter, don't get the best trips, whatever the case may be. They just don't run their race. And then you have horses like Giacomo, Mind That Bird, or Rich Strike. They're able to just put it all together and win the race. It's a great story, great Cinderella story. Nobody saw this coming. Nothing against the horse. It's just going to be difficult for him to duplicate that in a different pace scenario, because right now it looks like 11 horses are pointing to the Preakness Stakes, and the only 2 horses I can see that have a decent early pressing speed, early voting for Chad Brown. He'll be a new shooter. And then your Preakness Stakes runner-up, Epicenter, who probably ran the best overall race, and he's going to be the Preakness favorite. So I would expect that he would run a very good race if the pace scenario is moderate. Now, we talked about new shooters. Codex, Aluma's Ruler, Deputed Testimony. They were 3 of them that got the job done. Red Bullet, Bernardini, Rachel Alexandra, Cloud Computing for Chad Brown, Swiss Skydiver, a filly for Ken McPeak. Last year, Rumbauer was 3rd in the Bluegrass, and then he ended up winning the Preakness Stakes. So 3 of the last 5 Preakness winners did not run in the Kentucky Derby. But overall, you see horses that maybe didn't win the Derby, and they can bounce back, and then a new shooter can jump up and win the race. So if you think that fast pace kind of wiped out everybody, and they're going to be a bit tired coming back in 2 weeks, some new shooters like Creative Minister and early voting can definitely be considered in 2022. Now, in new shooters, since the year 2000, we've seen at least a lot of times some new shooters come in. I mentioned Rumbauer, Swiss Skydiver. Jesus' team was 3rd that year in 2020. He was 40-1. We've seen some horses finish 2nd and 3rd. Everfast at 29-1 in 2019 was 2nd. Owendale was 3rd. Tenfold hit the board in 2018. Cloud Computing won in 2017. We had a 3rd place finish from Senior Investment at 31-1. Cherry Wine in 2018 was 2nd at 17-1. Divining Rod 3rd, and Tale of Verve 2nd in 2015, 28-1 and 12-1. So you get the story here. Horses that didn't run in the Derby can certainly finish somewhere in the top 3, and a lot of times at least one of the top 3 positions in the Preakness Stakes is a new shooter. So consider new horses in the Preakness for sure. Now, again, looking at the regions now that we've seen, the strongest and weakest regions, I think the Louisiana horses obviously did well. The Risen Star Stakes we mentioned before the Kentucky Derby was a key prep, and then we saw Epicenter and Zandon, the winner and the 3rd place finisher in that race, finished 2nd and 3rd in the Kentucky Derby. So those horses are quality horses. If they show up in the Preakness Stakes, they're certainly contenders. So those are some of the angles and things to look for in the Preakness Stakes. One of the biggest misconceptions in the Preakness is, Pimlico's a speed favoring tight turn track and speed's going to dominate. Pace makes the race. That's just not true. Way back when, they used to actually soup up the track a bit for some fast times, but we haven't seen that in many years now. Typically, Pimlico plays fair, especially at that distance. Every distance is different. Obviously, if you're in sprint races, you're probably going to want to be closer to the pace. And in these longer races, horses can rally, but pace makes the race. And I would say, just based on the early pace scenario, looking at the horses that could run in the Preakness in 2022, it looks like horses with early pressing speed should do well because there's just not a lot of speed. And look what happened in the Derby. We saw that suicidal pace, and you're not going to see that 2 weeks later. You're probably not going to see that again in the Triple Crown Series this year. And then in the Kentucky Derby, probably the next few years, you're probably going to see more moderate paces and horses with early pressing speed and that tactical ability doing well in the Derby in coming years after this crazy pace that we saw this year. So that's a look at the Preakness. Again, I'm going to be selling my annual Preakness full card at the runawayhorse.com on my sales page, Preakness Week. I'm going to cover Black Eyed Susan Day as well, and my full cards from Santa Anita. And this summer, I'm going to be doing, obviously, Belmont. I'll be doing my Belmont full card later in the spring, and then Del Mar full cards each day that they run for the summer meet. So that's my schedule coming up. I'm going to be covering as many videos as I can on this channel as long as it continues to grow. I enjoy doing these videos. I want to thank everybody for all the comments that they made on Kentucky Derby Week. I've tried to get back to as many people as I can and interact with the fans who enjoy my videos. And hopefully we can, together we can make money at the races. That's the main thing, that why we're doing these videos. And I hope my videos help you and lead you to some winners. Until next time, good luck at the races.